Boom. Here we are in the virtual studio, episode 9 of the Wisconsin BHA Hike to Hunt podcast, joined by the host of, or the panel of hosts that you know well. We're missing Emily today. She's hit it hard this weekend. She's tired, needs some recovery before we get after it on Monday. So missing her, sending her good vibes. I know she's got a whole list of really intense questions for our guest Liz today, and we'll get to those shortly. Real quick, we're joined by Ryan again. We've been missing you forever. The beard, the man, all of the things. You've ditched us to do some saddle hunt training. Just kidding.
No, I didn't ditch you for it. I got one in the mail the other day, and I haven't had any time to really mess around with it. So hopefully this week I can sneak away for a few minutes and give it a whirl.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Where since we haven't caught up with you, we'll get caught up with the host or the panel of hosts, and then we'll get to talking with Liz. So, Ryan, this is like 2 or 3 weeks of catch up. Last time we talked, I think you were in a little bit of a rut. You had just come off vacation. You were trying to get back outside.
As far as miles go, no, I think I picked it back up a little bit. I think I did almost 10 last week, and I got 3.5 in today. So I feel okay. There's always room for improvement, though, right?
That's what we love about you. So with all that going on, you've got the saddle for hunting. Where else are you at in your hunting training? It's August. What did it say? August 2nd now.
Yep.
How far are you out from your first tag?
So I think whitetail is going to be all I can handle this year. So we're remodeling our house, and it just really isn't conducive to taking a trip out west again. But so you got a little more than a month and a half. We're opening, or a month and a half ish before opening day. I bought a new bow, so that's going to take up some time. New saddle, new bow. So I'm basically going to go into the woods not knowing what I'm doing this fall. We had I had a great opportunity to shoot my bow at our pint night last Thursday, which was a great time. We had roughly 30 people there, and there was some different novelty shoots and people busting arrows on metal targets and stuff. It was a pretty good time over at Whale Tails in Dousman, Wisconsin, and we were kind of in early stages of talks to be part of their big buck party at the end of the year, which is, I believe, January 16th. And they said they typically get over 100 people at it. So hopefully the times are good for us, and we can get a bunch of people together and kind of do the same thing again. So we'll see where that all goes. Obviously a ways out, and hopefully we got some tags to fill before then.
Nice. I like it. So have you started... You just got the new bow. What did you end up with? I know we were all exchanging this in the text thread, but what did you end up picking for everyone at home?
I bought a Prime Black 5. I bought it used, so nothing fresh out of the box, but way better than what I was shooting just from a technology standpoint. I got it dialed into 40 yards right now, so I can't complain too much yet. And just looking forward to getting some more arrows through it.
Solid. I like it. All right, Anthony, where are you at? Have you finished completion of signing up for Hike to Hunt?
Have signed up, got the app. I'm in.
Nice.
I'm in the door, putting numbers on the board.
Attaboy. I don't know if you're on my friends list.
We gotta
hook up on there.
You guys catch up motivation.
Anthony, for you, what's the first hunt going to be this fall, and how are you training for it?
Quail. So I've been just out there getting skeet. Just practice behind the shotgun. Really excited.
I like it. Where are you going to hunt quail?
Northern Wisconsin. I can't really tell you the place because if I tell you, I have to,
Yeah.
But it's gonna be good eating. Sure.
Quail's awesome. Good stuff. I like it. Kelly, where are you at? What's your first hunt? How are you training for it?
I mean, maybe I'll get out for like an early season teal or goose or something, or even I guess morning dove starts around Labor Day weekend, right? So sometimes I get out for something like that. But usually sort of the opening weekend of all opening weekends is the archery season opener. And then every once in a while too, I'll slip in a fall turkey hunt that morning and then archery hunt in the evening. My dad reminded me this year how very early the archery season opens this year and what the temperature might be for trying to do something with a deer that night. But I mentioned before on the podcast, I've never missed one. I've never missed an opener. And so I reminded him that I will be going, whether he likes it or not. But we'll see. Yeah, that's the first one. Hike to hunt has been maybe picking back up a little bit now that the temperatures are nicer. Just was out taking a walk on the wildlife area this morning. Just a polite PSA for all you folks out there. The DNR folks are working real hard to get, stuff mowed again like they normally would. Everything is just like the rest of our lives is impacted by the pandemic. And so they're out there busting their tails, making sure everything is as close to normal for the fall for everybody, expecting ease of access, like mode access for certain areas. So yeah, I'm way behind Bill on the paddling miles. Been debating on if my Wisconsin river trip this weekend will be recorded for a mileage or not, but it'll be like something like a couple miles in 8 hours kind of thing. I'm not sure how if that feels fair to me. I maybe have a few more scruples than Bill. I don't know when it comes to recording my miles, but that's where I'm at. And for those of you who watch this as a podcast, like as a real podcast, and are just listening, you can't see the ridiculous hat I have on this week. I am reaching deep into my hat collection for the rest of the summer series. And this one that I have today is a hat that I've had for a long time. It is I'm describing it for you people who can't see it. It is a blaze orange, like those foam trucker hats that says Buck Fever on it with like a sketched out buck. It's been real good to me for times like bachelor parties and bar crawling. It's really good for that. People like it a lot. So that's the hat for the week. Like I said, next week, if next week's the last episode and you really want to see me wear a hat, let me know. I'm down to the last hats in the collection.
I like it. I'm a big fan of that hat.
It's huge. It's so big.
It is monstrous. So with that, everybody listening, thanks for being here. Hopefully you're out training for your hunt. You're ready to get after it, or starting to maybe dial things in as we get closer. Our guest today, Dr. Elizabeth Baker from the Wisconsin BHA Board of Directors, from the Wisconsin Sporting Heritage Council, all the things outdoors. She's mom, doctor, wilderness athlete, all the things. Total, just savage. Liz, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Where are you at with your hike to hunt? If you're not signed up, don't feel bad. You're not the first person. I doubt Emily is signed up yet.
Yeah, haven't signed up, but we do a morning walk, stroller push, sometimes with a pack, sometimes without, about 3 mile loop. So I probably should just sign up because I'd be getting in about 3 miles every day. But yeah.
Yeah, that'd be crushing it. That'd be a consistent 3 miles every day. I live on the river, so I do a lot of kayaking, and I count that. And there's a lot of debate whether or not they're legitimate miles. So with that, Liz, what's your first hunt for this fall, and what are you doing extra to train for it?
My first hunt will likely be archery deer season, and just starting to get the bow out and getting it tuned up. Since had Eva, who she's a year old now, I can't believe that happened. My hunting has been pretty restricted locally. Haven't had any aspirations to go out west quite yet. But we've got about 30 acres or so right in our backyard. That's great for turkey and whitetail hunting. So I get to just get up early and wander out there when the fall archery season starts. So Kelly, thanks for reminding me that it's really early this year, because I'll have to change my layering system up a little bit.
Get ready to sweat it out, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I donated my my hunting gear at the pint night we had down in Madison. So thinking that I was going to have time to go and get a new one, I realized I'm running behind on that. But yeah, just getting ready for archery season. So getting out about 20 arrows a day in a target and getting those muscle memory back.
I like it. Solid. So with that, we're going to, Liz, let's dive into just for everyone listening or watching, if they're not familiar, the quick and the dirty on Liz's background in the outdoors and what brought you to BHA, and then we can dive into the most recent positions and all the things Wisconsin outdoors. Sure.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in a family that hunted. I came into it through a friend in high school, and then ultimately my husband, who he had been hunting or bow hunting deer and wanting to go out west hunting for a while. So he introduced me to archery, and that was actually out in Arizona. We would hunt for coos deer, mule deer, and I just loved it. I loved spot and stock, hiking, combining with just getting close to nature. One of the first hunts that got me hooked was he drew a tag on the Kaibab Plateau in northern Arizona, and we were doing a stalk, and I think we got within like 10 feet of 2 fawns, and I just started laughing because I couldn't believe that this experience was actually happening. So that concept just got me hooked. So when we were in Arizona, I was going to medical school, and then when I got into my residency was out in Michigan. I just didn't have time to continue hunting. But when we moved back to Wisconsin is when I picked it back up again. We bought our house and our property, and we intended to buy property for hunting if we could, and it just all happened to fall into place. So I got into BHA because when we first came back to Wisconsin, it was 2016, and CWD was all over the department's website, and I just I didn't know what it was. I heard of it a long time ago when I was going to high school in Platteville. That's when they had a earn a buck tag, and so I remember some of my friends in high school were kind of grumbling about that a little bit. That's when they had, in-person registration. There was like this social event that happened every fall. I remember guys would get out of high school early for hunting season opener and go out. So coming back to Wisconsin and seeing that this was still happening, the big part was that my husband and I do like to eat our venison and elk. I mean, that's kind of been our main protein source other than chicken. So knowing that we wanted to eat venison and concerned about this prion disease, that kind of got we started to dive in more about the science behind it, what could be done, what was happening right now. And really it was just about getting our deer tested. So we had to drive, I think, about 20 minutes from our house to go and get our deer tested, or to find a kiosk. So we wanted to make sure that we could, if we were having a hard time just understanding the disease and getting it tested, we knew that maybe lots of other people are having that same issue. So we got hooked up with our local deer biologist, Eric Canania, and I think Mitch sent him an email, and we were able to get a kiosk put right just down the road from us. So that was convenient for us. So selfishly, we wanted to kind of make sure that all the deer that we were testing were going to be easier for us, but also for our neighbors who this is like prime hunting area down in Sauk County. So that kind of got us rolled into then the Adopt a Dumpster program, which that was picked up on that from our friend Doug Duran. I remember hearing his name on a Meat Eater podcast, and he said it was from Casanova. I'm like, wait, I think that's close to here. This is when we just moved here. So I think we sent him an email or called him saying, hey, what's this Adopt a Dumpster thing? What's going on? And from there, we kind of formed this friendship united by the bonds of fighting chronic wasting disease, at least fighting the spread. So gosh, that brings us to 2017. We did the the kiosk, the dumpster started, adopted dumpster started in 2018. And that's kind of when we really started working together to try to make an impact on having more dumpsters placed on the landscape. We knew that it was not enough just to have your deer tested. All of the science that was available to us at the time, there was really nothing we could do to help remove deer carcasses that are prions off the landscape. You know, unless you hunted a deer and tested it positive, there's really no way to help keep them off the landscape. And as we would drive around, you'd see carcasses in ditches and things like that, or people had their own property, they're just putting them on their property. So understanding the science of how that prion persists in the environment kind of sprouted the idea of getting dumpsters put out. We'll collect the carcasses, we'll put them in a landfill that creates an end point, an end collection point then where it can't be recycled in the environment. Yeah, and then we kept rolling with that. Sorry, I kind of blended all my history into the dumpsters, but it was a lot of inertia. And somewhere along the way, I think we went to a deer turkey expo. There was a bunch of guys with beards and hats with Teddy Roosevelt on them, and went up, and they seemed friendly enough. And hey, they're BHA. They care about public lands. They care about stopping chronic wasting disease. So we just joined right in, and it's been a wonderful relationship ever since.
The way you said that makes me laugh.
No, I mean it's good. Like we definitely have, you know, healthy discussions about certain topics, but what we all agree on is that CWD sucks, and there's more that can be done. Mm-hmm. And BHA has been very vocal in that, and also really hands-on, which is just what we need.
Awesome. Team, what do we think? Do we want to dive into CWD since we're already on it? Does anyone think that's a good place to start? Then we can head towards the latest Sporting Heritage Council, if that sounds good. Yeah, I'm getting nods. All right. So I have yet to have any of my deer test positive, knock on wood, in Portage County. Have anyone else had their deer tested, had a positive?
I've had many deer tested. I have fortunately not had any positive ones yet. I've hunt on properties that have had positive deer come off of them.
Also,
in a southern farmland zone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was just gonna say until I got involved in BHA, I didn't really even think that. And I guess I won't say BHA specifically, but once I started hearing all the podcasts, especially with Doug and stuff like that, none of my friends ever thought about it, and a lot of my buddies still don't get theirs tested, and I'm like, well, that sucks. I don't feel comfortable eating that stuff, but so yeah, I think it's good to bring the awareness to it, and I think there's probably a lot more people like myself out there that haven't until recently even really thought about it.
Yeah, that's been sort of the case in my very small family hunting group, I guess, was that for the most part, we were hunting in areas that luckily so far haven't had high prevalence in the wild or any wild cases, positive cases. And what I have been talking with my dad a lot about is just that this is coming. And so we might as well get in the mode of making this a part of our routine, of thinking about that this deer could be positive when we're processing it, get it tested, so that when the time comes, if the time comes, we hunt mostly in southern Wisconsin, so likely that the time will come that we will have deer that we're regularly dealing with that are positive. And so then it won't be a big change when that happens. But also just working for the department previously, being a biologist, understanding the importance of all of that data that we can get from any part of the state that where you test deer. It's important for everybody to be testing, sort of regardless of where you are or how many positives there have been detected in the wild herd or in a nearby captive herd close to where you hunt. It's every data point is valuable, and it's a way for you to contribute as a hunter. And like I said, just to get sort of in the mode, especially when you haven't been thinking about it for decades or you aren't used to it. So you sort of start to ingrain into your mind the process of, okay, this is sort of how we're going to deal with our processing. This is where we can go to get a test done. All of those things I think are really, it becomes much more part of your sort of calculus of deer hunting, I guess you could say, when you start to do it regularly. And then it doesn't seem maybe as overwhelming or as much of a nuisance. At least that's the way I've thought about it. And I think now that, other people that I've sort of introduced to this idea of, yeah, we're going to test everything that we harvest, they started to think about it that way too. Liz, you've been so active in the CWD the CWD front of Wisconsin. And I think people like you and Doug and Mike Foy, our citizens who have been so persistent on trying to get stuff done through policy or, through funding mechanisms. And so you've been really active, and you mentioned the dumpsters and the kiosks. You've been really active in trying to get dedicated funding for things like that across the state from the legislature. So do you want to talk a little bit about sort of how that came about and who you worked with to try to get that move forward and sort of where those efforts are at?
Yeah. So, some people I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit. My husband and I approached chronic wasting disease from the human health standpoint. So, here is a progressive degenerating neurological condition that is in mammals, and there's a human form type, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So I already have Alzheimer's as a strong familial inheritance in my family. So the fact that there could be a potential accelerant to that was as a human health concern from my standpoint, especially since having a daughter who we intend to, feed venison. But then the bigger picture really is the health of the deer herd. And that's what I think has been so hard for the public to grasp, that chronic wasting disease is always fatal to deer who get it. And the progression from the time of infection to the time of death is, I think, 24 months or less. And it's only within the final around 6 weeks of life of the deer that you actually see the physical wasting of the deer. At that point, so much neurological tissue has been damaged that they cannot function properly, can't find food, can't drink water, so they literally are wasting away. But those deer are sick, and they're continuing to spread the prion, the infectious prion, from one to another and leave it on the landscape. So we have a large deer population in southwestern Wisconsin. And as this spreads, as more deer become infected, we're going to eventually see the point where the number of healthy deer are going to drop, and we're going to lose the reproductive years. And so eventually there will be a drop in the deer population, that population decline levels that they've seen out in Wyoming and Colorado and mule deer. So that's kind of the bigger picture here. And it's not a raging forest fire right now. It's this fire though that's spreading very slowly, and we don't have any way to put it out. That's the big picture. So everything that we've been trying to do is to just slow the spread by time, so that researchers, groups like CIDRAP can get the funding secured to perform the tests that can help get a point of test done on that would increase the testing process, or at least some type of vaccine or something to help fight this prion. There's a lot of research and money going to that right now on the local and then national level. So with that, I think it started back in August 2018 when the Department of Natural Resources wanted to slow the spread of CWD, and they had an emergency rule that would have restricted deer carcass transport in CWD affected counties. That rule was suspended, I think, October 2018 at their meeting. So we realized that there had to be a better way to help hunters from spreading the disease through carcass transport. So it made sense then to have a lot of dumpsters out to do this. So basically, when it came down to it, we tried to look, Doug Duran did quite a bit of work just kind of investigating and figuring out the best way to approach this. And essentially deer are, you either bag it up and put it out with your garbage, right? So it's like it should be municipal responsibility to help remove it. Because up to that point, it was just like our local hunting club funding the dumpster, paying anywhere from $600 to $900 out of their own pocket to have the dumpster placed for the duration and to remove it based on the tonnage. So Doug Duran, Mitch and I met with Senator Mark Line, who's on the Joint Finance Committee, and he's our local representative here, to come up with a bill that would help provide funding for counties that are affected by CWD to get dumpsters placed. And that ended up being Senate Bill 325. It was presented. We went and testified on behalf of it. There were quite a few other groups that provided testimony, which was excellent. BHA, Greenfire, Wisconsin Wildlife Federation as well. So we presented it, but ultimately I don't think it was actually voted on for a while, but it did get, I think, struck down to a couple, just the counties that were affected. So we ended up getting funding secured. And that, I think I'm messing it up. Let me back up. Ultimately, there was then for 2019, the department did have funds set aside to help people offset the cost of the dumpster. So the bill itself wasn't passed as we had written it, but what happened was the department did get some funding set aside for specifically deer carcass dumpsters. So, for example, our with BHA, we had a dumpster placed out on the Goose Lake property that we've adopted, and I think the department was able to match us for our how much it costs. So it's like a 50-50 split. So that just really helped offset that burden, that financial burden to have these dumpsters placed. And based on the tonnage and based on the incidence of CWD in some of those counties, we could effectively say that we removed over like 200 positive deer, whether or not they were tested, just based on the statistics. So there's no other way up to this point that anyone can claim that they've removed prions from the landscape other than just deer in a dumpster hauled to a clay-lined landfill. So we're hoping to have that program available again for this hunting season. I'm not sure where it's standing yet. I think COVID-19 has really made an impact just everywhere. So looking forward to getting some of those emails back from Eric Kennedy on what's going to be happening down the road.
Dang. There's so I know, so I follow along because for all of the same reasons you just mentioned, like it's super important to me. And I'm sure you have to feel like a broken record at this point, right? Like repeating the information, the story. But I can't thank you enough as someone who values the deer population in this state, being able to eat it, being able to have these resources available. So I'm just like, well, what's Liz doing right now? Follow along. Who can I reach out to? Where can I follow along and learn more? So thank you for doing this. And then how can other people, if they're hearing this for the first time, seeing it for the first time on this podcast, right? That's really why it's so important for you to keep reminding people and spreading the message. So hopefully we get more people hearing it. But how can people do this in their own county if they're so inclined?
Yeah, great. It's very easy. You just go onto the department's website and they have it listed there for adopt a kiosk and adopt a dumpster program. It's I don't have the webpage pulled up in front of me, but essentially you can find your local deer biologist, and I think that's kind of who their point person is for now. Like Eric Kennedy covers like southwestern Wisconsin, so he covers quite a few counties, but they're always looking for new volunteers. And so the kiosk itself, there's 3 different levels to adopting a kiosk. And the whole purpose of adopting a kiosk is to, again, reduce the burden upon the DNR employees that have to go and check the the kiosk foreheads, because the process is pretty gruesome. Again, if you had asked me like 5 years ago that I'd be spending half my year focusing on dead deer and performing biopsies on dead head lymph nodes, some that are very fresh, some that are extremely old and it's terrible, I would have thought you're crazy. But this is what happens. So you hunt a deer, you remove the head, and the instructions are all in the kiosk. It's all there. And there's these lymph nodes that are tucked underneath the pharynx of the deer. It's called retropharyngeal lymph nodes. That's what the department needs to have access to. So bottom line is the head goes into a bag with the information, which is probably the most important part. Fill out that form appropriately. If you have any questions, again, when you adopt a kiosk, you're the person that a hunter can call if they have any questions about filling out that form, because that is really a big rate limiting step, is if they don't know where or who the deer head belongs to, then they can't trace you back and inform you. And then they can't use the data then effectively if they don't know where that deer came from. So fill out that form completely. And if you have questions, ask. So that all goes then to, the head gets picked up then by a department employee. They bring it back to to the facility. I think it's down in Madison area, where the technicians sample the lymph nodes and they run the tests, and you get your results online. So that level 1 adoption is basically just driving by. If there's a head in there, you call and let the department staff know, hey, there's a head to pick up. Very simple. Level 2 is where you take the paperwork and you verify the information that's put on there, or if it's lacking information, you call the hunter, because they should leave their contact information on there, and just verify the location and things like that. And I think there's a lot of issues that people have with filling out that form, because they think that if they put their name and their location of where they got their deer, they're going to reveal where their hunting spot is. And no one cares. No one's looking at that. No one has time to look at that information. So your hunting spot secret is safe. We're not like secretly using our, Onyx map to pinpoint where all these great deer are being found. So that is a conspiracy theory. Please shut that down. So the level 2 kiosk adoption, then basically you're taking an extra step out of the department's hands to, again, get that information faster, so your test result comes back faster. That's the whole point. You're speeding up that process, increasing that turnaround time. Now, level 3, which Mitch and I did last year, is where we actually will take the lymph node sample, put it in the baggie, and then send it off with the department. So we're doing the data verification, and we're also doing the lymph node sample. And that just, again, the whole point is to help increase that turnaround time, which is one of the biggest complaints that the department gets, is tests take too long. On average, it's about 5 to 7 days, but it takes longer if you don't fill out that form appropriately. So again, when you adopt a kiosk, you're just helping facilitate that process. You're making CWD testing easier for everyone. So the more people that want to do it, it's gonna just make it a lot smoother. I think I got through all that. Callie, maybe you can verify if I said anything incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes.
No, that was good. A good description of, and I'm not familiar with the different levels for how you can adopt a kiosk, but yeah, the concept of it has been talked about for a while, implemented in the past couple of years. I would, as a person who doesn't work for the department, is just a hunter at this point. Whatever opportunities we can provide for people to have ease of getting a sample done, and like you said, Liz, the turnaround time, and having as accurate of data as possible. All of those things are super important to the department and ultimately to us as hunters, to have all of those things working together nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap up the if anyone has a CWD question, and then Liz, if you want to add anything or conclude with CWD after any questions, then we'll move right along.
Yeah, so hopefully this fall we'll start seeing new hunters enter the woods. Why should they be so concerned about CWD?
I think a lot of it could depend on level of concern, could depend upon where you're hunting, right? So again, the the reasons to care about chronic wasting disease are probably number one, deer herd health. So the longevity of our deer herd, which again, deer hunting in Wisconsin is $1 billion industry. So when you think about like how much money Milwaukee brewers bring to the state, deer hunting is at that level or even more. And a lot of that money goes into rural communities, which, is the backbone of this entire state, So bottom line is, if you want to have a healthy economy, if you want to and you want to support your rural economy, you need to care about deer hunting. And CWD is probably the biggest threat to our deer herd health in this century. So if we don't start caring, what will happen, and I'll just gotta play it out. Again, the timeline is what is unknown at this point, and that's what is most contested, is that we don't know when that tipping point is going to happen, when enough deer have been infected that because of the death rate, how quickly they die from it once they're infected, which is 24 months, it's 2 years. So eventually our herd age is going to become younger and younger. We're going to have lower reproductive years. There will be a deer herd decline. By the time that reaches southwestern Wisconsin, where we have, 20, 30,000 surplus deer in some counties, that's going to be hopefully well long after I'm around and my daughter's around. But again, it's that conservation mind, right? Those in the womb of time that we have to think about. That's the big picture. So if you care about deer, if you care about conservation, you have to care about chronic wasting disease. Not just in Wisconsin. This disease is spreading throughout the entire country as well. So that's why there's federal funding happening for this. And then you could also look at it from a human health standpoint, right? So this prion, when ingested, again, there's animal studies that show that it can be ingested and be infective. So you could potentially eat, again, enough. We don't know this data either. We don't know how much, or we can't even prove that by eating CWD infected venison that you get the human form, the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or chronic wasting disease in humans. So we can't prove that, but the concept is there. And again, there's a lot of research going into potential human health impacts. So for someone like me who intends to feed my 1-year-old venison, I want to know that it's testing negative, because at least that threshold is low enough. And if she's going to consume venison for the next, hopefully she'll like to hunt and she'll like to eat venison. She might, turn vegetarian or vegan on me. She'll get to choose. But 30, 40 years of ingesting venison, if I'm not testing, I think I'm being very irresponsible with her longevity, her health, our future generation. So there's two ways to look at it. I think you have to look at it both. And so it's not a fear-based, even though that's kind of how it sounds. It's more of we can do something. We can be proactive. If we choose to do nothing and put our heads in the sand and say it's next generation's problem, I guess that's not my philosophy. So I would like to think that there's a lot more people that are thinking ahead instead of thinking about themselves.
That was a good way of answering it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Liz, I think it's not, it's pretty typical in human nature for us not to see how things affect us until they directly impact you as an individual, right? And so it has been really eye-opening to me. And like I said, I've been thinking about CWD as a deer hunter for a while, but it does really change the way you think about your hunting experience when you know that a deer you harvest has a distinct possibility of testing positive. Just sort of changes your entire outlook on what you're doing. And coming from a place where I did, many years of not having to think about that, and now having to think about that with a lot of the deer that I potentially harvest, it just really changes. And so to me too, what I tell people is that just that looming feeling of the not knowing and thinking that, am I going to have this animal that I don't want to eat and I don't want to share with anybody? I don't want anybody to have to feel that way. And so what can I be doing as a deer hunter to help to help proliferate this concept that we shouldn't have to deal with it. We should be doing whatever we can to remove that level of concern or level of effort, or just this concept that maybe you're not going to eat the animal that you harvest. Whatever we can do as hunters to sort of remove that from people who haven't had to experience that before is super important to me. So like you said, if there's another generation that won't have to think about this, then all the better, then I'm the one that helps stop it. And I think very much about sharing venison with especially people who don't have the knowledge about CWD like we do, or people who can't make choices for themselves, like children, about what you feed them. To me, it's a really big responsibility that I take very seriously. And then again, I would love for my, nieces and nephews to not have to think about it that much. If they're out and become hunters and want to share their harvest with anybody, then wouldn't it be great if they don't have to think about these things like we do? Why would I not do everything I can to try to prevent that from happening?
Excellent. Yeah. You mentioned something and it made me think that, something that, what can hunters do to help? And I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. And what I'm centering that around is like social media and how we talk about deer hunting, or just ethics of hunting in general. And I know that's a whole nother podcast and we could go on that, but for me, I didn't get to evolve my hunting ethics like I think most traditionally, where my first time hunting, I kind of wanted to make sure I had a very ethical shot. Didn't matter what it was, I was gonna focus on that. But then with chronic wasting disease, I remember last year saying, well, there's some young deer, the chances that they have CWD is lower than a mature buck. What do I need to fill my freezer? Do I need to remove an animal off my landscape? So, and all of a sudden now there's a lot of other questions coming into my decision to let my release go, or pull the trigger. So when it comes to deer hunting and hunting ethics, I think it has to evolve with CWD in mind. And it also has to be local, right? So I'm in Sauk County, very high positive rate. It's not like I post for the sake of bragging, but it's been an exploration and understanding that social media responds to deer hunters. So I have a lot of friends that don't hunt. They don't like hunting. They eat meat, but it's just not their wheelhouse. So I've tried to portray myself as a hunter that's someone that they can relate to, right? Not what you see on most, Hollywood type, right? The Elmer Fudd, basically every hunter that I've ever seen portrayed in a movie has been a very negative thing, except for like Katniss Everdeen and Hunger Games. But still, it's like hunting, but hunting people. Like it's very blurred ethics there. So as a hunter, hunting for sustenance, which is the primary reason that I hunt, now I have that CWD question in mind. And whereas before I would just hunt for what I would need to fill my freezer, I've got 4, sometimes 6 doe tags each year in my area. It gets exhausting to think about hauling 6 deer out on my own. So this is something that we have to do collectively in our area. And the concept of what is a good hunt, what is a good deer, that has to evolve, and it has to be with CWD in mind. And we can't berate each other or think negatively of each other if someone shoots a younger deer or not, or how many young deer they shoot. I think that's the point I was getting to.
I'll just say it. They taste better. There, I said it. I put
a lot easier to carry out.
I put a few in my freezer every year. They're delicious. Ryan, you have any CWD questions before we wrap up?
The only question I had, just out of curiosity, I know you mentioned that they've seen some population issues out west. And I'm probably completely wrong, but was it the mid 60s that they had first discovered CWD out that way?
Yeah, so it was first detected on a research facility, and then they could kind of watch the deer and how that disease progressed. So it's kind of like, I'll give an example. Basically, yeah, so there's a lot of misinformation and theories out there as far as how CWD has existed. Has it always existed and we're just finding it? Is it really spreading? The bottom line is that when we look at the data, especially in Wisconsin, this is spreading. This is not just was in the environment and we're just finding it now. This has been spreading through deer movements, just like between interstate, deer movement, but also human assisted or anthropomorphic spread. So a lot of people in the Midwest travel out west to hunt elk and mule deer, and then bring carcasses back. And so it's we're an international traveling species and interstate traveling species. So we're going to carry and spread a lot of disease things. I mean, that's why we've got Dutch elm. If there's any type of disease, it spreads because we bring our resources with us.
Absolutely. And the question, I guess, above and beyond that was, so there's some data out there that's saying that there's been population issues out there. So are we thinking that it's something that has obviously taken longer than what we know of the disease, so 1965 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So I guess the question is just, do they have any data on, I guess, how rapid that decline was?
That's interesting.
Specific. Yeah. Is it specific to areas, or is it? Does that also spread? I would assume so, but.
Right. Yeah. So I think again, I don't have that paper right in front of me here, but basically, a lot of it had to do with specific habitat as well, right? So like the carrying capacity for a certain landscape, the fact that a lot of those deer migrate, and so when it came down to it, that there was a low enough population and low enough habitat sustainability that when CWD started to spread, it became, I think, an instance of above somewhere between 30 or 40%, then that's when they started to see deer population level declines. So all we can do is just extrapolate that to our, deer herd population. So in some counties, we have 50% positive in male deer. Somewhere it's between 40 and 50% for does of varying ages. So what's the translation is, we see more deer testing positive. The herds are having higher prevalence and incidence of CWD. This habitat is great for breeding deer. We just don't know at one point in that timeline how many years it's going to take before we start to see those population level declines. So there's evidence to support that CWD can cause population level declines. We just don't know what that means for our habitat and our deer herd here.
Gotcha.
Damn. Awesome. Liz, do you have any concluding thoughts on CWD? Wrap that up.
Yeah, so let's just think about for this upcoming season. The DNR website has the list of kiosks and dumpster locations from last year. I'm sure they'll be compiling for this upcoming hunting season. That's your resource to go to find your nearest place. If you want more information about chronic wasting disease, the sources that I recommend are Brian Richards through the USGS website. Also, if you go to CIDRAP, CIDRAP, that's the Center for Infection Disease Research and Policy. So they've put together a whole section on chronic wasting disease resources and what the research is out there. So if you want to get more information, I'd start there. Also, the department's website has great information too, but you want to go beyond the department's website.
Awesome. And I'll have the links in the show notes to what we've been talking about through this. So everyone at home, when you get out hunting this year for your deer, get them tested, get the data in. Like, it's pretty easy to do, and it's going to help. So we've got the Sporting Heritage Council. Congrats on winning that.
Thank you.
What is that?
So I'm not sure 100% yet because we haven't really had any meeting or emails, but basically it's a group of 12 citizens that is there to advise the governor of issues mostly pertaining to R3, recruitment, retention, and reactivation. So They were, I think, originally formed under Governor Walker's time frame, I think around 2012. I'm not sure the impetus for the formation of the group, but bottom line is that this is a way for more public input at the legislative level. And I think that was a great opportunity to bring forth deer hunting concerns, especially when it comes to the recruitment and retention aspect.
Those are big things we've been talking about on this podcast all summer, is the idea of recruitment, retention, reactivation, and kind of getting that on the ground user experience. So you're kind of responsible for that. Something we've also been talking about is the idea of R4, so relevancy in the outdoors. So how would deer hunting be relevant to someone outside of maybe just deer camp or rifle season? I don't know if you've ever had the R4 talk with Emily, but I know her and Kelly have talked quite some about it. So
I haven't yet, but I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Kelly, jump in here once. We need you.
So talk about relevancy.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is stuff we've talked about too. I've talked about with you, Liz. Is just what makes how are hunters relevant in a 21st century society? How is R3 relevant? Why would we spend taxpayer dollars to, support things like R3 or R4 efforts, but R3 efforts as they're traditionally known, and sort of tying that back into, like we've talked about, how are public lands relevant to people if they're not hunters? So yeah, I mean, I guess it will be interesting as you progress on in this council, how much those kinds of topics are talked about, given that you sort of, you can provide guidance to the state governor. It's what are we doing? What are we doing on a statewide policy level to try to make R3 efforts relevant to all? And by all, one thing that we've really hit on a lot during the podcast too is that how do we invite diverse people to the table? How do we ensure that access is for everyone of all abilities and of all resources, things like that. So I know you said you've just recently been asked to serve on the council. And so if you have ideas that you want to share related to those topics, feel free. I mean, like I said, you and I have had really good conversations about kinds of things, and I don't know how many other females are on this council. I would bet not very many. But
I think I'm the first one.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think which you serve in a certain capacity for the council, right, Liz? It's the deer hunting.
The deer hunting representatives.
Yeah, and that sort of relates a lot too to what we talked about last week, and this sort of this idea currently that we see fed to us in hunting media about deer hunting sort of being a male dominated type thing. It's certainly what you see a lot of in this state. You see a lot of portrayal of men deer hunting, and we're seeing a lot more women being portrayed in social media deer hunting. But I talked a bunch last week about deer camps being sort of this male construct, and so it will be, I think, really refreshing that you are able to bring this different type of perspective, as a person who's, I guess, what we call an adult onset sort of hunter, a female hunter, a mother, a person who works in the medical field, but is also very actively involved in conservation from a legislative standpoint, all of these things. I mean, that's, to me, this is all you make hunting relevant to a huge group of people in the state because of who you are. And it will be really cool to see what you're able to bring to the group.
Well, thank you. We've talked about, what is it going to take and to make hunting popular, right? And it's limiting in and of itself, right? The fact that you're telling me I have to go and spend X amount of hours, X amount of dollars to get ready to just have maybe an opportunity, right, to see a potential, game that I could harvest. And then you're telling me that I have to process it and I have to take care of it and I have to figure out a way to cook it to make it taste good, right? So it's like this huge, almost insurmountable concept because we've lost that as a species because of all of the wonderful technology that we have. I think Ryan was saying he got a new bow. Technology changes so much. For me, I think the way we have to bring more people into hunting is to broaden that definition, right? If I include foraging while I'm hunting, even if I never draw my bow back, but if I'm discovering something new or learning about the forest as I'm going through there, that is going to breed more of a conservation minded person, I think, than just the simple, get the deer, take that picture, brag about it kind of a thing. So hunting can be very nuanced. And I don't know if it's just, there's no media outlet to talk about all of those different things that you encounter while you're hunting. I think it's always ultimately on the TV shows, the hunting shows, the dramatic music that plays, up until the bow is drawn and then the shot's made. And then all of a sudden there's this just conclusion of the hunter walking up to the deer, but there's no before thought, afterthought about the hunter's internal dialogue. So exploring what it feels like to go out into the woods for the first time, right? I think if people hear that story, they'll understand that everyone goes through that, right? Except most people probably that were introduced to hunting as a kid kind of grew up in that era that the guys went out hunting, right? You went to the hunting camp and that kind of a tradition that was passed along. So if more hunting licenses are being sold to kind of adult onset hunters, and I don't know if that term is still relevant now, but it's still thrown around a lot of podcasts. So then we have to talk about as an adult what that feels like to go through those feelings, right? Or sorry, those experiences of deciding to take the life of an animal, but what your purpose is in that. So I think there's been a lot of good dialogue that's happened on different podcasts, kind of exploring that, but that doesn't seem to be the main focus for a lot of the hunting companies out there, or hunting clothing, hunting equipment. So what you see is kind of what you think it should be, right? So we have to show them something different, and I don't know how to get that out there. I don't have a blockbuster video ready to go, but I think it would have to be something on a broad scale, right? Changing that image of what a hunter is. I think the best way to do it though is start local, right? So I have a sister and a mother who would never hunt, but last fall I got my sister to sit in a blind with me during hunting season. We talked most of the time, but it was that, again, shared experience, just that concept. So a concept I've kind of thought about was, bring a hunter, or almost like bring a buddy hunting with you, right? Someone who's never hunted before, not that you're trying to convince them to hunt, but just, this is what hunting can be, right? Just sitting in the woods, quietly observing. That's what hunting mostly is for me. I don't know, maybe people on this podcast have seen a lot more action than I have, but most of it's just sitting and observing, which is very relaxing in and of itself. So the excitement that happens with hunting, I think a lot of people chase that. And I think that's what has been focused on a lot for the recruitment, right? Getting kids opportunity, right? You need opportunity to see a deer, but also showing that you can have a valuable experience even when you don't have an opportunity to pull a trigger, that's that reward. That's that, conservation mind. That's the going in the woods and understanding how the habitat forms the deer. So stop me if I'm rambling, because I feel like I'm rambling, but I guess as I'm going to raise my daughter, hopefully on this property, those are the thoughts that I have. How do I teach her to love the land? Because whether or not she chooses to hunt, I really don't have control over, but I can at least have her understand how conservation works, how you have to have healthy habitat to support species. And the way a lot of conservation projects are funded in the state is through the sale of hunting licenses. So everything's connected. So even if she doesn't hunt, she needs to respect that hunters are important in conservation. And I don't think anyone talks about that, how it's layered enough, how the funding cycle works, right? Like Land Water Conservation Fund was just now funded indefinitely, right? They passed the bill. So huge win, right? I believe that comes from tax dollars off of oil subsidies, right? So that seems that's a dichotomy, right? Why are but we've turned a potential negative into a positive thing. So understanding that if we all of a sudden decide to not buy oil, we lose Land Water Conservation Fund. So unless something happens, something changes the policy, how it's written. So policy and conservation go hand in hand. And the TV shows don't talk about that. Hunting shows don't talk about that. So we need people that want to care about conservation hunting. And I think that there's so many opportunities to bring people in, whether it's just you enjoy hiking, you enjoy watching birds. I mean, we need to reach out to everyone and educate everyone that thinks of hunting as a negative as part of that pyramid that supports that supports a lot of different conservation projects.
I like it. Ryan,
can I jump?
Yes, I was going to say, I want to throw it at you. You haven't had a chance to speak in a few weeks. You got to be
I think it's
jumping.
Oops, sorry. I think I muted myself. I think it's interesting that we're kind of looking for ways like you specifically said, that hunting brings in over $1 billion to the state. I would assume that that's lodging, fuel, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're searching for a way to try to make hunting look cool and appealing to people. And I think that not that money always is king, but I mean, to a certain degree, a good economy is good for everybody within the state. So today, Liz, was the first time that I had ever heard that number specifically. And I think that would just be a super simple way to say, hey, hunting is good for us as a whole, as a community. And there's no reason to, I guess, just specifically label, hunters, what do they do for us? I think it's pretty clear that based on those numbers that we do something. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it adds to everybody's life, but to a certain degree, I would say that it probably keeps some of these small towns alive with just the amount of money that they're getting. Little restaurants, little corner bars. I mean, I guess that's the reason probably why places like Monaco and Eagle River exist to a certain degree. And those are great places. And if we could push the facts that, hey, hunters and anglers are really good for the economy, maybe people would kind of take a different look at it, other than not that you want to pull anything away from the conservation aspect, but just the community as a whole. Even for people who aren't interested in it, I guess we do have some place that we fit in. I don't know. I was just thinking about it as you guys were talking, and that, like I said, that was the first time I heard that number, and I never really looked at it as, obviously I knew there was a lot of financial gain from hunting season, but just to look at it from that aspect, and especially comparing them to the Brewers, that flipped a little switch in my head. So
it's 2.5 billion. I just looked it up on the DNR's website.
Mm-hmm.
Even better.
Right. Yeah. So, here you could say, we could have a thing, hug a hunter, right? Look at what hunters are doing, but it's the resource, right? We have this landscape, this habitat that's just prime for white-tailed deer. We grow big deer. I think the big picture is that, you know, with the North American model of conservation, right, like we've done enough damage to habitat that we now actually have to manage the deer populations. Otherwise, if we don't, we run into a lot of issues. So the way the department manages deer is through hunting. We are their number one resource for managing the deer herd. And if we lose that, either through losing the deer herd health to something like chronic wasting disease, or we don't make hunting accessible to people, at least the concept that it's a good thing and not just what Hollywood wants it to be, because it's easy to make someone holding a gun and taking an animal's life, you know, an enemy, a bad person. If we create that dialogue, right, and start having those conversations, just talk to someone who doesn't hunt, right? Talk to someone who doesn't hunt, and at least get them to understand the role that hunting has. It doesn't have to be this kind of a long, you know, drawn out process, but I think you gain more with that conversation than you do with Instagram or things like that, because the context isn't there. Yeah, it's very complex. I think that I've certainly been asking myself more questions that I've probably gotten more answers as these years have gone by. But it's an area we need people talking about for sure. So that's part of Kelly, what I was wanting to bring to the Sporting Heritage Council is just the concept that, you know, the hunting heritage. What does that mean to versus board? What does it mean to legislators? Because if it's just to pardon the, you know, the example that's used, you know, a bunch of old white guys sitting at a camp drinking beer, right? I've seen Escanaba in the moonlight, like it's hilarious, but like that's what people think of, and it's not the full picture. So the fact that they've allowed me to be on the council, I think, is a sign that they're looking for some different perspectives. So I'm glad that they're willing to consider it.
Liz just gave us a huge schooling in like if R3 was R4 and relevancy was a component of like, you know, everything you're talking about, Liz. This is why I enjoy talking to you so much, is you get this whole, you see the whole picture of like, it's not just about making new hunters. It's about having people appreciate where hunting exists in conservation, and inviting people to see what you're doing. Like what you said, you know, you invite your sister to come sit with you, and you know, you're not solely focused on making her a hunter. You're just focused on getting her outside and having her see what hunting is about, because ultimately these people who don't hunt decide the future of whether or not hunting exists in our society too. And therefore it must be relevant to them as well as relevant to us, obviously, as hunters. So I'm so appreciative that we have somebody that can talk at a high state political level about more than just what is it going to take to get more hunters. You know, it's you're thinking about what does it take to get people to understand where hunting fits in conservation, and how we need to ultimately respect when people choose not to participate as a hunter, but that still have this sort of ethic about wildlife conservation in the state. I love that. I love talking to you. I'd love talking to people about that who have a different background than me, and that also aren't, you not working in the conservation field, you still think about these things pretty deeply. And I really respect that you're willing to take your own time to volunteer for this committee and speak to the truth of what hunting is really about and how hunting fits into our heritage, and how hunting will be relevant to the rest of these people, that most of the people in the states that don't hunt.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I think you're awesome. And I've certainly learned so much just by having conversations with you too, as we were kind of exploring how to get BHA, you know, involved in, you know, just getting women involved in the outdoors. So it's awesome. Look forward to continuing to work with you on that.
I like it. Anthony, I want to throw this last question at you, because when I think of like the idea of hunting heritage coming into the outdoors, you instantly come to mind, like kind of I'll make a plug again. The Warmth of Other Suns, the Wisconsin stories in here specifically of the Great Migration and the families it follows are like crazy powerful and intense. So I highly recommend this book. But kind of your story of coming into hunting as an adult, how 14, right, when you first shot the gun,
Yeah,
and it
14.
kind of unlocked like all
Interest.
of it, all of this interest in you, and then now you're at a point where you're 27.
No, I'm old. I'm 29.
Yeah, whatever.
Yes, watch out for the
You
gray
are
hair.
not old.
29.
Watch out, buddy.
So Anthony is 29, and we could all combine our mentoring in the outdoors, and he's probably taught more people anything hunting or safety related in the 7 years, right? You've been in Hunter's Ed?
Yep.
Yeah, so the four of us can probably combine our numbers and still not reach yours.
I wouldn't say that part. You know, I play my part.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So what are your thoughts on like the word heritage, where that is in the state, and where you potentially could see it grow?
There's a lot of room for growth. But at least we're on the right path of at least talking about it. And it seems like we actually have plans that we're moving to that direction of growth, getting new hunters in and continuing to reactivate old hunters as well. And then there's also transfer of knowledge. We have a lot of forums such as BHA that is transferring that information about what it means to be outdoors. That's very valuable. So, hey, kudos to all you guys for playing your part. And for those who are listening who are also playing their part, thank you. It means the world to new hunters.
I like it. Kelly, you have anything you want to end with for Liz?
Thanks for what you're doing. Like I've been saying, it's always so great to see hunters become active in and really interested and knowledgeable about the policy side of things, the science side of things, and just like I was just saying, seeing the whole picture. So it's interesting. It's interesting to think about where I do those. Do I do any of those similar things in my personal capacity? You know, since I have this job in conservation and that's my passion. Are there other aspects of my life that I'm also passionate about where I spend a bunch of time? And I don't know if there really is, but so that therefore it's really great to see when people use the valuable personal time that they have to, you know, elevate this platform and of information about things that they really care about beyond their day job. So thanks, Liz, and we'll be watching what you get to do with the Sporting Heritage Castle and cheering for you the whole way.
Thank you.
Bam. Liz, I forgot to have Ryan go over this week's challenge, so we're going to make sure we do that at the end of it. But Liz, do you have any last thoughts for anyone?
Yeah, you know, I didn't get to be on this position of the Sporting Heritage Council just on my own, and I would never want anyone to think that. I mean, the support of my family, but also the group of backcountry hunters and anglers. I mean, just that whole by uniting hunters together, we can be very powerful and influential in the ways that we want to, right? If we're focusing on conservation efforts, you know, the Pebble Mine, there's a lot of things that are out there right now that, you know, as the Wisconsin chapter, we're not having, you know, a big influence on, but you're going to be plugged into those issues. So, you know, you don't have to have your boots on the ground to make a difference. Your voice is what is needed. So if you're wanting to be more active, you just have to start showing up to meetings. With COVID-19 now, Zoom into something, or you know, ask those questions. You know, if you're seeing the Natural Resources Board change the deer quotas in your county and you haven't gone to a local CDAC meeting, go and find some answers, ask some questions. Make sure that you're listening to reputable sources. Don't rely on your own biases or you know, a hunting buddy's anecdotal story to be the end all be all. You know, go and dig a little bit deeper. sometimes the information is not hard or not as easy to find, but that's where the department's website, some of the resources that I've listed here can help you guide you along that process. And certainly a group like BHA, we're doing that legwork for you. So if you have questions, start asking them, and then start showing up to some of your local meetings to have your voice heard. One of the greatest things that's come out of the CDAC meetings is the questionnaires, the personal comments. Those are recorded. That's public knowledge. And I'd love to see a study happen, like reviewing like 10 years worth of data on like a certain county deer management and how the public input has influenced that. We can do a lot. We just have to start letting our voices be heard.
Love it. Thank you, Liz, for everything. All right, Ryan, before we forget, what's this week's challenge?
How quick is this going to go out? Because we got August.
This is going to drop tomorrow, as in the 3rd.
Oh, perfect.
So it'll be for
perfect
week 8.
Time to start then. So this week is just your best trash pickup photo. I would assume on public lands, but if you see garbage anywhere, just pick it up. Just as a good rule of thumb.
Such a dad. Such a dad. I love it.
Well, hey, I'm just trying to do my part, like Anthony said. This week's actually a pretty sweet giveaway. If you win this one, you get a bunch of really sharp things from Gerber. You got an engraved pack hatchet, which I do have one of those pack hatchets, and it's pretty sweet. I will say that. Their new Exo Mod Caper, fixed blade. You got a couple of different things. You got a saw, and then some new products that I have not quite looked at yet. But of the things that I did look at and the thing that I do own, pretty sweet price package, $304 worth of sharp things that you can cut things with and chop down little trees if you need to and start campfires. So
I like sharp things. I'm a big fan. All right, I'm gonna go start taking pictures of all the garbage I pick up. I like it. Thank you all for doing this. Liz, it's awesome. Everybody watching or listening at home, thanks for joining us. See you later.